I'll just harken back to what I said about the FBI's decentralized workforce. We have 1,000 people throughout this country working just cyber. That cuts across computer scientists, intelligence analysts, and special agents. Their ability to have immediate access to classified holdings, to understand who you may be dealing with, is a very, very powerful tool for all of you when and if you unfortunately become a victim. And really look forward to discussing that specific role we have and how you can benefit from it.
Good day, everyone. My name is Guillermo Christensen. I'm the managing partner for the Washington, D.C. office of Ice Miller here in Washington, D.C. I handle cybersecurity and national security issues for clients, and actually came into this business by way of the government. I was at CIA and spent about a year working at the FBI, and I'm very pleased that today I'm joined ahead of a chat we're going to have at NetDiligence in Philadelphia with Bryan Vorndran, who's the Assistant Director for Cybersecurity at the FBI, who is the highest ranking badge carrying, just to be absolutely clear on this, law enforcement officer of the U.S. government dealing with cybersecurity, which I think is a pretty weighty set of responsibilities. Bryan recently took over this role after an amazing career that we'll talk about at some length, a little bit, I hope, in Philadelphia. But the goal of our fireside chat that I hope you will join us in Philly for will be to talk about where the Bureau is and where it's going in the cyber world. So with that, let me see if Bryan can talk a little bit about kind of his the mandate that he has as Assistant Director for Cyber and some of the key priorities that he's been aiming to achieve during his time. So, Bryan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Guillermo. Yes, my name is Bryan Vorge. I am the Assistant Director of the FBI's Cyber Program, and I've been in this position for just over a year. Prior to that, I spent time in New Orleans, but I'm very much looking forward to the event in Philadelphia on June 2nd because that is my hometown. Looking forward to discussing several really important topics, such as the FBI's decentralized workforce across the United States, the strength of that workforce, how we coordinate work across multiple nation state and criminal threats, our decentralized workforce globally. We have a workforce in more than 70 countries and dedicated cyber personnel in about 15 countries. Some of the most important topics for me that I hope to be able to discuss with all you are ransomware, OFAC, our relationship with regulators, and incident response and the lessons we learned over those incident responses with people like Guillermo. Guillermo, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Bryan. I think one of the topics I know we're going to spend a great deal of time talking about is the evolution and the role that the FBI has in dealing with incident response. I think it's fair to say, 20 years ago when I was first getting into this business, there were a lot of people who were very anxious about talking to the FBI about anything happening on their network. It was kind of this fear they're going to come in, they're going to get all our data, and we're going to end up with an investigation. People are going to go to jail. I think that myth is mostly eradicated today, right? I mean, that's not what you hear, but there's still a lot of questions that come up about what exactly does the FBI do in an incident response scenario? What can they do to help the victim? And what can the victim do to help the FBI prevent these things from happening to other victims? So I think if you could touch on some of what, your perspective on that area, we'll obviously get into it in a great more detail in Philadelphia.
Sure. Just initially, what the FBI actually needs in those moments that a company or an organization unfortunately becomes a victim of a cyber intrusion is quite limited. We have it down to about 5 or 6 pieces of what I would refer to as tactical intelligence, IOCs, TTPs, specific malware signatures, if there is virtual wallet information so that we can potentially trace the money. These types of really specific indicators or pieces of intelligence that are relative to an investigation. And from a perspective of what the FBI brings, we look at it this way. There are certainly long-term investigations in play, but our role more than that is to enable the community, the intelligence community and our other government partners that are focused on net defense, but then our role with folks like Cyber Command to really continue to keep pressure on the threat. And the FBI has become much better over the years at doing proactive work to put pressure on the threat. So those are just some initial thoughts, but very much look forward to getting into this more on June 2nd.
And I think another area that we will be touching on, because it's become the topic du jour for a lot of us, is the threat of ransomware. Most of us, I think, are probably doing about 50% of incident response dealing with ransomware, the other 50% being so-called business email compromise and fraud events. But on the ransomware side, for the last year or so, the Department of Treasury has been warning about the risks of making payments to entities that are sanctioned under the Office of Foreign Assets Controller, or OFAC, which is kind of an interesting twist to this. OFAC, for the most part, we've dealt with things like, Iranian state actors. Obviously, right now we've got a lot of action with Russia, but it's a very murky picture. We often don't know who we're dealing with on the other side of that. So I think we will certainly enjoy a conversation with you where we can delve into that area a little bit more and understand what perhaps the Bureau can help the IR world to understand better. If you could maybe touch on that issue now for a little bit, I think if you have some thoughts in particular about recent cases where OFAC has been an issue for you and for your team.
Yeah. We have a very good relationship with Treasury, the broader department, and the specific guidance that Guillermo is referring to, the OFAC regulations, speaks to early cooperation with law enforcement being looked at very favorably by OFAC in terms of a mitigation for a company and organization unwittingly paying a sanctioned entity. I'll just harken back to what I said about the FBI's decentralized workforce. We have 1,000 people throughout this country working just cyber. That cuts across computer scientists, intelligence analysts, and special agents. Their ability to have immediate access to classified holdings, to understand who you may be dealing with, is a very, very powerful tool for all of you when and if you unfortunately become a victim, and really look forward to discussing that specific role we have and how you can benefit from it.
And Bryan, you touched on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is the role of intelligence in this. I was very happy to see that a good friend of mine, Tanya Ugoretz, was recently elevated to the top of the heap, as it were, at the Bureau for Intelligence. She's an old friend. I think that that's a crucial aspect of what you do. And I think a lot of the incident response community does, I think, wonder, when we provide information, is it helpful? And are there, besides the information you alluded to, the 6 kinds of information, are there other ways in which we can help to defeat this horrible problem that's afflicting U.S. businesses and individuals from cyber criminals? How is intelligence helping there?
Sure. The reality of it is sometimes we learn about a new ransomware variant or a new threat actor set in real time with all of you. But sometimes we have additional information in our holdings, and based on our investigations and based on our work with the U.S. government interagency partners such as NSA, Cyber Command, and others, and sharing some of that information back with all of you, not just at the moment of the intrusion, but after the intrusion, and continuous sharing is just really important to us, and we would imagine really important to you. The best days are the days that we can come to a victim and say, based on what we know, based on our investigation, you should expect to be able to negotiate a ransom down by X percentage, or you should expect to have this much time to negotiate a ransom before your systems truly are encrypted. Those are great days for us, and I think not lost on anyone, but specifically me. The reason most of us join to do what we're doing is to help people who are having a bad day, and those moments are really, really important to us.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly endorse that. We're all driven by a great mission here, and that really motivates. So obviously, I don't want to give away the whole store here in terms of the great topics we're going to talk about in Philadelphia, but some of the other areas we're going to touch on. I know Bryan has a number of actual case studies that we're gonna talk about, including Kaseya, one of the most interesting cyber intrusions by sophisticated state actors, and we've got some really good, I think, ambiance and context around that we will be able to get into. And then the other thing that I think will be a great part of our conversation will be triangulating between law enforcement, regulators, and the IR community and the role that each has, because I think those questions often come up. If you talk to the FBI, are you also talking to regulators, and are you somehow creating some issues there? And obviously that's a very fast moving picture because regulators are getting all kinds of new authorities, whether it's the SEC or CISA and DHS. So please join us June 2nd. I hope we can get Bryan a good Philly cheesesteak while he's up there. I'm sure he's missing them being here in DC. So thank you all for joining us.